The Toronto Raptors just made some massive changes, and no, it wasn't just one or two adjustments. The entire Raptors rotation has been overhauled. So we're going to break down what Darko Rajovic has done to completely reshape this team, how it's going to affect the team going forward, and how we can really unlock some of our guys with this rotation, because these changes have some Toronto Raptors fans really excited. I know beating the Washington Wizards means absolutely zero. It means nothing, but the changes that have been made to this Toronto Raptors rotation certainly does. So we're going to break down all of that in this video. But before we do, folks, as we all know, Toronto Raptors fans want moves. And over the past year or so, we've been teased with trade rumors that just haven't happened. Masai Ujiri hasn't been able to pull the trigger on any of these moves. And if you feel like the Toronto Raptors right now not making a move and you want some change, then it's time to move for you. And Rentals.ca has you covered. Rentals.ca is Canada's largest apartment hunting network. You can rent houses, condos, apartments, whatever it is, you can find it on their website, which is clean. It's easy to use. You can pinpoint exactly on the map where you want to live, where you want to find your next rental place, and Rentals.ca will give you the best possible options. They are located from coast to coast, from BC to Newfoundland. Wherever you are, Rentals.ca will be able to find you the perfect rental listing. So definitely check out Rentals.ca. They also got a lot of cool stuff going on over their social media. So check out their Instagram, their Facebook, all those types of things. And shout out to Rentals.ca for having all of us covered with delivering the best rental listings all across the country. But, as said, the Toronto Raptors, people have been calling for this team to make some moves. And while it hasn't been a trade, while it hasn't been, a big shakeup in terms of the roster, we had a major shakeup happen with the Toronto Raptors rotation. As Darko Rajovic, he's been feeling the fire. Raptors fans have been calling for something to change. They've been calling out his relationship with Dennis Schroeder to say something's got to give here, because Schroeder, even though he's been good, and frankly, he has impressed me by taking an elevated role as a guy that hasn't really thrived as a starter over the course of his NBA career, he's been solid with what he's been asked to do. But we know that Dennis Schroeder is a premier backup point guard in the NBA and is kind of a lower tier starter. So the fact that we have some guys that are starting caliber players on the bench, particularly Gary Trent Jr., and Schroeder was getting all of this run, all of this rotation, and all of these touches under Darko Rajovic, people were turning their heads and saying, this is a little bit messed up. Well, it wasn't just that change. Darko Rajovic listened to that, and he put Gary Trent Jr. into the starting lineup. So that is something that was done by Darko Rajovic last night against the Washington Wizards. What he also did is he moved Scottie Barnes to the point guard position. We've been hearing for 2 years, 2 whole years, that Scottie Barnes will have the ball in his hands more often, more offense will be running through him, and that sort of made us all feel like, okay, it's finally happening, folks. Scottie's getting moved to the point guard position. I was yelling last season because Fred VanVleet, frankly, is a much better shooting guard, in my opinion, than a point guard, because he can space the floor. He's a shot chucker. He played so well off of Kyle Lowry, who, again, was another small guard, so things were still weird, but that was Fred VanVleet's best role. We wanted Scottie at the PG and then Fred at the 2. Didn't happen. We come into this year, Darko's really discussing how, really alluding to the fact that the ball is going to be in his hands, all that type of stuff, and Schroeder's been the starting point guard this entire season, and it was much worse this year in terms of roster fit, given the fact Schroeder's just not that elite of a shooter. At the beginning of the year, when he was knocking down threes at an elevated clip above his career average, things didn't look absolutely horrific. But as the season has gone along, particularly over the past 3 weeks, it has gotten more and more ugly. And then closing games, Schroeder does have a tendency to play a little bit faster than he really should be playing, and then can turn over the ball at times. So, again, didn't really fit that well. So people have been wanting, one, Scottie Barnes to play the position that he wants to play, that he's played during his college career, that he threw in his Instagram bio. I'm not sure if it's still there at this point, but he feels like he's an NBA point guard, and now he's playing that role. And last night against the Washington Wizards, and again, when I bring this up, I am not saying it's a big win or we should read into anything at all about this Raptors team turning around the season by beating the Washington Wizards. However, this team had 40-plus assists last night. I mean, this squad for the Toronto Raptors just looked better. They made more sense in terms of what was going on out there on the court. 43 assists for this team. And Scottie Barnes in this one ended up having 20 points, had 12 rebounds, had 8 assists, 3 steals, and even though things are still a little bit weird when Jakob out there on the court in terms of floor spacing and things along those lines, but the facilitating there was more space there for both Scottie Barnes as well as Pascal Siakam to just create, to not have to drive in on multiple pieces, not to have to force in dump offs and things along those lines. Both Scottie and Pascal had the opportunity to facilitate. Pascal in this one, 22 points, 11 assists, 6 rebounds in this one. Our top 2 players really had strong performances. And then OG also got the opportunity to cook. He got more spaces, and obviously he's going to knock down his threes. Went 3 of 7 from the 3-point line. But in this one, and again, a part of this is the Washington Wizards defense just being really bad. I mean, looking at their starting lineup, Kuzma, Advia, Jones, Poole, none of those guys are elite defenders. Stafford can definitely block some shots, only have 1 block, 4 steals in this game, but that defense is horrific. It is outstandingly bad for the Washington Wizards, especially with their bench players and Corey Kispert and these guys. So, it's not that crazy of a deal that OG was able to sort of slash and get some buckets in the paint and do his sort of thing out there, but there's just a little bit more spacing with Gary Trent Jr. out on the court. But frankly, I haven't been that worried about Scottie Barnes, OG Anunoby, or Pascal Siakam this year. Sure, sometimes they have bit high and low games, and, it's a roller coaster of a season with any NBA player. But overall, I think those 3 players have been relatively good for the Toronto Raptors, even if OG and Pascal have been a little bit down in terms of what they've been doing over the course of their recent seasons and things along those lines. But it's the rest of the team that makes sense, because Darko Rajakovic wasn't done with the Gary Trent Jr. switched into the starting lineup and Scottie Barnes getting moved to the PG position, because the Raptors bench in this one looked a heck of a lot better. It looked a heck of a lot better. I mean, Schroeder commanding that bench unit, and still, he got 28 minutes, which I think he's earned. Schroeder has been good for this Toronto Raptors team. It's just that his role has been a little bit too elevated. He's being asked to do a little bit too much by Darko so far over the course of the season, but him on the bench and commanding that bench unit, doing what Darko's asking him to do with the bench unit, makes a heck of a lot more sense than doing it with guys like Scottie, Pascal, and OG in the starting lineup. And he looked really good off the bench tonight for this Raptors team. Was a plus 29 in this game, 28 minutes, and had 9 points in this one, had 10 assists, facilitated that bench unit, and then unfortunately for Marcel, the Malachi movement looks like it's come to a halt, because he was completely relegated to garbage time in this one. If we weren't playing the Washington Wizards or, one of those horrible teams in the NBA, Malachi would be relegated to just 0 minutes in this game. That's just how it sort of went. So Malachi Flynn is basically out of the rotation. Dennis Schroeder's taking that backup point guard spot, and he looked really good at there. But then also off the bench for this Raptors team, obviously Boucher and Precious got, some minutes. Boucher got run throughout sort of the game. Precious was also relegated to basically garbage time minutes in this one as well. And I don't know, as much as I like to drum up the propaganda, as much as I like to drum up the hype on Precious Achiuwa, it looks like a little bit of a disaster class from Precious Achiuwa out here right now. So he's been actually playing a little bit better at times as of late. I don't want to completely just bash on him, because I know after this game, a lot of people are scoffing at sort of the performances he had. But, Precious Achiuwa, he's out of the rotation right now. That's something we could just say, because now Otto Porter Jr. and Jalen McDaniels, my God, I can't even speak. My brain is gone. McDaniels are into that sort of rotation minutes. Getting 19 minutes there, and Otto Porter Jr. 13 minutes. But, throughout the game, he didn't play much of that garbage time run. But that's interesting, because McDaniels is obviously a guy that can play defense. He was really good for the Charlotte Hornets, and frankly, he was just bad to start off this year. But Darko kind of looks at him as more of a switchable, spacey guy. He didn't make any of his threes last night, but I didn't think he played horrible. And there's actually been, when he's had some rotation minutes, earlier in the season, he was dribbling the ball off his foot. It got really messy. It got really ugly. But I thought tonight, even though he missed his shots and stuff, it wasn't a horrific game from McDaniels in terms of everything he was doing. Defensively, he provides a lot of versatility and things along those lines. So, that's an interesting switch. Putting Otto Porter Jr., who's a guy I've been saying needs to be in our actual rotation, and then McDaniels, into that sort of run. But that switch, again, I think it helps wins. I think it helps sort of what's going to happen with this roster. But obviously, Precious and Malachi are 2 players that, could be unrestricted or could be free agents come this summer, are younger players of this team development. The fact that they're out of the rotation here now at this point, and we're giving this run to Otto Porter as well as McDaniels, That means we're moving in that direction. We're making that last push. We're making that last sort of strive to say, hey, this Raptors team can be good. We can make our push back into play and really shake things up. So, that's a change. Again, I've not bought into completely tanking this year, just given the fact our draft pick is a very unlikely to get, given that teams like the Washington Wizards, like the San Antonio Spurs, like the Detroit Pistons, who I know Raptors fans are still pretty worried about, we're going to lose that game and end their sort of historic losing streak, but I digress on that point. But with teams like that in the NBA that are overtly tanking, that have a lot less talent than this Toronto Raptors team, we're not going to be able to catch them in the bottom of the standings. And it's going to be tough to guarantee that we're going to have a bottom 6 pick. And if we just throw away a year, absolutely tank a season, and we don't even get our draft pick, that would be devastating. That would be just a travesty for this organization. So I'm all for giving Otto that run, giving McDaniels, making these changes, making that push, run Scottie at the point guard, try experiment different things and see how it all sort of shakes out. Again, we beat the Washington Wizards. We're not going to get that hyped. We're not going to get that pumped about it, but the Raptors did make those major changes that we sort of needed. So we'll see how it all shakes out with this team. Playing Boston on Friday is going to be a massive test for this roster. So let me know what you guys think is going to happen with this Toronto Raptors squad. You guys are the best for making this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.